Go ahead and get on the record now. We'll be on the record in case number 2019 CR 983, captioned State of Kansas versus Francisco Hernandez. Would the parties announce their appearances, please?
Aaron Whitman for the state.
Garrett Solomon on behalf of Mr. Hernandez, who appears in person and in custody.
That's supposed to mute. All right. We are here set down for sentencing. We've had a little bit of a rough go of it, but I think we're ready to go. There was originally a plea agreement that was entered into. The court took that up and accepted the plea. However, by sentencing, all the parties realized that the plea that was entered into did not accurately reflect the agreement of the parties. Therefore, I allowed the defendant to withdraw his plea, and he entered into a new plea with a different charge. We went through that again. I accepted it once again and ordered a pre-sentence investigation. We had a pre-sentence ready to go for the first sentencing, but when we changed the terms of the plea, we needed a new one. That was filed as a second amended prior to this hearing, but the parties realized beforehand that there were some inaccuracies in that one, given that this was given to a new PSI writer. So we've talked about those before coming on the record today, and it's the intent of the court and the parties to go forward with the sentencing. We will orally amend as we go through, and my PSI writer believes that by the time that the end of the hearing is reached, that we will have the new PSI, a third amended, that will accurately reflect the charges and the sentence for the charges in this case. So given that, I'm going to go over now the second amended pre-sentence investigation. It reflects that we were in court last, again by Zoom, back on 12/11. That's not right. That was the original plea of 12/11/2020. The sentencing date was set for February 11th. It was at that time that we allowed the defendant to withdraw his plea and enter a new one. So we were in court by Zoom on February 11th of this year, at which time the defendant changed his plea to one of guilty of the charge of involuntary manslaughter while driving under the influence, which is reflected in KSA 21-5405A3. That is a severe.
I'm sorry, Judge, I didn't hear the end of your KSA 21-54.
5405A3.
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt as well. The date is today is February 11th, 2021. He entered a plea. He entered a no contest plea on January 29th, 2021.
Okay, the record shall so reflect. All right, thank you for that. All right, so he entered a plea of no contest to involuntary manslaughter while driving under the influence, KSA 21-5405A3. The state provided a sufficient factual basis for a finding of guilt, and I found the defendant guilty, ordered this pre-sentence investigation. This charge is a severity level 4 person felony. The defendant's criminal history score was found to be that of I, as in Isaac. That would leave him with a presumed sentence of prison with a presumed range of 38, 41, or 43 months. If he has to do his time, he's eligible for 15% good time credit and subject to post-release supervision duration of 36 months. The special rule number 42 applies, which is specifically for involuntary manslaughter by DUI. If he were to be granted probation today, it would be for a period of 36 months to community corrections. The PSI reflects that this is a registrable offense. However, that is in one of the inaccuracies that I noted earlier. It is not, in fact, a registrable offense, as subsection A3 is accepted from those under that statute. So I'm planning on orally amending page 1 to remove the checkbox of offender registration required, and page 7 of the document, which indicates that the defendant is being advised of his notice of his duty to register, and the checkbox marking the other subsections of involuntary manslaughter that would have supported that. So with those amendments, Ms. Whitman, I would ask you, other than those corrections that need to be made, any other additions, corrections, or challenges to those pre-sentence investigation findings?
I know of none, Judge.
Mr. Solomon, same question.
Your Honor, same. I don't know of any other additions or corrections that need to be made.
All right. Mr. Hernandez, I know that Mr. Solomon went over this PSI with you before we made these changes. And roughly the change in it is removing the offender registration requirement. With that change, do you have any objections specifically to the criminal history findings, that you do not have anything that would raise you above an I, the lowest level? In fact, no record at all found. Any objection to the PSI, Mr. Hernandez? Mr. Hernandez, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me, Judge?
Yes, can now.
Okay. Yeah, no, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. I will adopt the findings as amended orally of the PSI for today's hearing. Ms. Whitman, comments upon sentencing.
I'm sorry, Judge, I didn't hear that.
Comments upon sentencing, please.
Judge, I'd ask that you just adopt our recommendations of the 34 months, a minimum fine of $750, the KBI fee of $400. He gets credit. I calculate 538 days. And that's my understanding of the agreement.
All right, Mr. Solomon, comments?
Your Honor, I guess I do need to go back. Did you orally amend page 7 to take off the check mark box for involuntary manslaughter?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Regarding sentencing, Your Honor, I did file a motion for durational departure. Currently, he's facing a level 4 sentencing range. Given what we mediated prior to the plea, that was an agreed upon sentence of 34 months, which would bring it down to a level 5. Your Honor, we do believe he qualifies for this. I believe the mitigation in this matter supports the durational departure. He has accepted responsibility and entered a plea. He has no criminal history at all. He's been in jail since August 22nd, 2019. He's not a resident of the state of Kansas. He's a resident of the state of New Mexico. He was here working. He does have a young child who was born while he was in custody, and he's never seen the child in the flesh. He does have strong family ties, including his sister, who's on the call right now, listening in. His family all lives in New Mexico, and they will be able to help him upon his release from the Kansas Department of Corrections. And due to the fact that he was gainfully employed prior to this, I do expect him to be gainfully employed upon release from the Department of Corrections, Your Honor. For all those reasons, we would ask the court to depart from the original sentencing guidelines to what we've mediated.
Alrighty, thank you. I'm going to ask the defendant for any comments he has. I would note for the record that I have received from the PSI writer, the third amended PSI. If the lawyers would take the opportunity while I discuss this with the defendant to take a look at that, make sure that it reflects what we want it to reflect. We will make that so at the end of this hearing. Mr. Hernandez, now is your opportunity to tell me anything you want me to know in mitigation of your sentence today.
I just want to thank the court, and also I want to, say that I'm very, very sorry for the tragedy that occurred in 2019. And that's it, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Whitman, does any victims wish to be heard today?
I don't believe so, Judge. I had sent them the link. They've been involved in this. I've discussed everything with them. But I I don't believe they're on today, but they were during the mediation. I mean, they were around.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Solomon, do you know any legal reason why I should not now proceed to sentencing?
No, Your Honor.
All right. I am going to follow the plea agreement. I am going to grant the defendant's motion for a downward durational departure, and I will adopt as the substantial and compelling reasons for that those factors set out in the defendant's motion and the comments of counsel today. So therefore, the defendant will be sentenced to a period of 34 months in the Department of Corrections for this case. He's eligible for 15% good time credit and subject to 36 months of post-release supervision. He's not applying for probation, and probation would not be appropriate in this case. Therefore, it will be denied. He's entitled to jail time credit for all time that he has spent in jail up to this date on these charges. I am going to assess the minimum fine of $750 as well as the KBI lab fee of $400. You are retained counsel, Mr. Solomon, so there's no issues there. He will be assessed the court costs. There is no supervision fee given that he's not being granted probation today. And I believe no request for restitution, Ms. Whitman.
I know of none, Judge.
All right. Then I'm not going to order any restitution. Mr. Hernandez, when you get out of jail, your lawyer tells me he believes that you could become quickly employed. I know that it takes some time to get on your feet, but if I ordered you once released to pay these costs at $50 a month, which should get you done before your post-release is done, is that something you believe that you would be able to do?
Yes, sir.
All right. Court's order is going to be that upon release from prison that the defendant pay $50 a month until his costs and fines are satisfied. Mr. Hernandez, as a convicted felon, it's prohibited for you to own or possess a firearm, certain kind of deadly cutting instruments like dirks, daggers, switchblades, basically knives that could be considered deadly weapons. You have 14 days from today to appeal anything you don't like about your sentence, and you may be able to seek expungement in the future following successful completion of supervision. With that, Ms. Whitman, can you think of anything that I have failed to cover? I assume that you, Mr. Solomon, have an agreement as to the number for jail time credit?
Yeah, we concur with what the state said. I think it was 500. I have to do the math here, but it was
538.
Yeah, from August 23rd, 2019 to the present.
Correct.
All right, he's granted that jail time credit. And Ms. Whitman, anything else you can think of that I have not covered today?
No, Judge, what I'm going to do is I'll prepare the journal entry and I will send it to Mr. Solomon for his electronic signature, and then I'll get it to you today.
All right. And Mr. Solomon, anything else? Well, let's take up the third amended PSI. Did you get a chance to look through it while we were talking here?
Yes, Your Honor, I did. It does reflect that this is not a registrable offense, which was our main sticking point. The only other error that I see is the date of the guilty plea or judgment, which still reflects is December 11th, 2021, and it should be January 29th, 2021.
Right. January 29th of this year was the plea date. Sentencing date is today, obviously. So why don't we do that by interlineation so we don't have to change? I don't see that having a big effect. I think the important things are there. So, all right. Anything else for our record today?
Nothing, Judge.
None from the defense, Your Honor. I appreciate the time and patience.
You bet. Good luck to you, Mr. Hernandez. We're adjourned.